Okay, so we are recording now. I'd just like to acknowledge as well our partners in the series. We've got Royal Life Saving Society Australia, Commercial Aquatics Australia, OTM Sport and Leisure Planning Group, YMCA Victoria, the Victoria State Government Health and Human Services Department, Belgravia Leisure, Cleaning Melbourne, VACA, Align Leisure, Watch Around Water Accredited Facilities, EcoSave, and Western Leisure Services. Today's topic is eye tracking research. Specifically, it has implications for lifeguard supervision ratios. It's a really exciting project that Dr. Bernadette Matthews and her team have been working on in the Risk and Research Department at Lifesaving Victoria in partnership with Swinburne Uni. I was lucky to be somewhat involved in that. I was across the journey of this project. But we and Doc will go through all of that. But there's been a number of lifeguards across the state participated in this project, and I know there'd be some listeners on the show today who hosted Paola, who did the research component, the testing at their facility. So without further ado, thank you so much, Doc, for coming on today and presenting on this topic. It's great to have you, and I'll hand over to you.
Thanks very much, RJ, and thanks everyone for joining us today. As RJ said, I know it's a very busy time, so really appreciate people taking the time out to come and listen to the results of this research. And it has been a very big project and a long time in the making, and really appreciate the support of all the lifeguards and facilities that helped us out along the way with this one. So what we were looking with the research is using immersive VR technology to inform pool lifeguard visual scanning for drowning prevention. We worked with Swinburne University on the project with their experts in eye tracking. So as RJ mentioned, we had Paola, who really led a lot of the work and did the testing. So some of you would have met Paola if you participated in the research. We also had some support from Victoria Foster and Associate Professor Geordie Kaufman from Swinburne University. So great to have their support in this project. So what we were looking at, the overall objective was to provide evidence-based recommendations to the National Aquatic Industry Committee as to the most appropriate ratio of pool lifeguards to patrons in public swimming pools to maximise safety. And as we know, lifeguards play a critical role in ensuring patron safety, and particularly that the function of scanning and surveillance to detect drowning victims. And the guidelines for safe pool operations highlight that the lifeguard to patron ratio should be determined following a risk assessment. But we do know that anecdotally, the focus is naturally drawn to the 1:100 ratio. However, the evidence for that ratio is based on really expert opinion rather than empirical evidence. And so what we wanted to do with this study was to provide the evidence for these ratios and really help determine and provide more accuracy around what those ratios should be. So coming to the aims of the research, so to, as I mentioned, determine the optimum lifeguard to patron ratio, to also identify the factors that influence the potential for a lifeguard to identify a drowning victim, and determine if the patron to lifeguard ratio affects the time taken to detect a drowning victim. And so what we looked at with those timings were around the key timings around the drowning process and the recommendations for the ideal times to identify a drowning victim. We also wanted to compare the perceived number of patrons effectively scanned as reported by the lifeguards compared to the actual number of patrons effectively scanned within 30 seconds. and also to determine the potential impact of the external environment on the number of persons a lifeguard can see in a visual scan of a pool as specified by the lifeguards. So coming into the methods of the research, so we actually used some 360-degree videos. We took a number of videos at MSAC, so big thank you and shout out to MSAC for helping us to film the videos. And then they were displayed on a VR head-mounted display. And I'll show you some more pictures of what that looked like in a little while. The video showed various pool scenes with different patron numbers. So we had a range from 25 people to 115 people in the pool and the surrounding area. Some of the videos contained a simulated drowning and some didn't. So, and with the simulated drowning incidents, we looked at a couple of different key age groups with those. So we had a child and we also had an older adult, a drowning simulation. So looking at those key age groups that we know that people get into difficulty at public pools. So we had 50 participants in the research, which was fantastic. So 50 lifeguards, all qualified lifeguards, participated in the research, and they were instructed to react to the videos as if they were performing a lifeguard shift. So they were standing, as you can see there, with the headset on. And then on the right-hand side, you can see the visual aspect of what they were able to see in the pool. They were also asked to verbalise what they were seeing, so to treat it as if it was a normal shift, and to describe if they identified a patron in distress, and then the plan of action for the scenario that they were presented with. They also completed some questionnaires. So we had a simulation sickness questionnaire, because sometimes the VR can, create a bit of motion sickness. And we also had a specifically designed lifeguard questionnaire, and that had about 25 different questions, looking at both the demographics and the qualifications of the lifeguards, their number of years experience, and then looking at things around behaviours during a typical shift. So looking at their scan patterns, their postures, positions, looking at the patron ratios within their workplace, and different drowning prevention strategies in place. So that's those. So this shows an example of the video. Hopefully this will work. So this is what the lifeguard could see. So up. I'll just mute so that you can hear. Then that was the person describing what they could see, and you can see there the red dot is what we see afterwards. That's the eye tracking. So this is where the lifeguard was looking at the time, so that you can see the person scanning across and looking at different people in the pool at the time. So there were two pools, and the lifeguard was positioned, and some of the videos the lifeguard was in a different position. In this one they were positioned between the two pools. There was another version where they were standing at the end of the pool, just one pool, and looking down. So looking at different positions there. Oops. So coming back to the aims and moving on to the results of the work. So the first aim was to determine the optimum lifeguard to patron ratio to increase the likelihood of a lifeguard identifying a drowning victim. What we found was, as that as the number of patrons increased, the likelihood to identify a potential drowning victim decreased. So you can see from this table here, so we've looked at, divided the groups up into those less than 50, between 50 and 75, and then greater than 75 with the number of patrons. And then you can see in the table there that there was a drowning. We've divided them up into whether the drowning, there was a simulated drowning or whether there was no simulated drowning. You can see down the bottom there, if we look at the percentage missed in the drowning simulations. So even at less than 75, there was still some incidents that were missed. So I think that really highlights that we are dealing with human beings, and we're not perfect. So, you know, and really highlights the challenge of the role of the lifeguard. So, but we can see that when you reach over 75 people in the pool, that the percentage that were missed really jumps up to 50% of the time. So moving on to the second aim, this was looking at the factors within the study that could potentially influence the ability of the lifeguards to identify a drowning victim. So what we noticed with the observations that were made when we were analysing the data, that some of the things that influenced whether the person was detected or not, or, you know, those factors involved where the drowning incident was missed. So one scenario involved the patron using a flotation device, and then they took the flotation device off, or weren't using it anymore, and then the drowning occurred. And that one tended to be missed more often. So potentially that influence of the, you know, that security in that the flotation device was there, and the lifeguard initially thinking that person was supported with the flotation device, but then once they did take it off, they did get into trouble. The other one was looking at the proximity to a perceived qualified professional. So, for example, a swimming teacher or another lifeguard. And we do know that there have been those very rare occasions where a drowning incident has occurred in a swimming lesson or near a swimming lesson. So really highlighting that need to be vigilant around all areas. The other factor, and this is really looking at the challenge around using the videos for the research, but also highlighting the potential factors for a lifeguard as well in the day-to-day scenario, that once submerged, and a drowning victim can submerge quite quickly, once submerged, the patron really blended into the pool background and was difficult to see. And became, so that submersion really challenged the lifeguards as being able to identify the drowning victim. So the third aim was to determine if the patron to lifeguard ratio affects the time taken to identify a drowning victim. So, and we looked at key time periods, looking at 10 seconds and 30 seconds. So coming into the results there, so when the ratio was above 50, the lifeguards tended to take longer than the 10 seconds to identify a drowning victim. Now that 10 seconds, as many of you would know, has been recommended from the Lifesaving Society of Canada, suggesting that 10 seconds is the optimal time for a lifeguard to detect a drowning victim in order to intervene in less than 30 seconds, so that 10-30 rule. The results do suggest that with a ratio of 1 to 50, the patrons per lifeguard could be optimal to achieve detection within that 10-second period. I will note though, however, that these results, I think we need to look a bit more closely at these results, and you can see from the graph on the right that there is a great variation when we look at that, the number over 75, and that the average does drop under the 10 seconds, but there is, as I say, a great variability there in that over 75. But I think, you know, overall it does highlight that once you get over 75 people in the pool, it really does affect that ability to be able to detect a drowning victim. So the fourth aim was to compare the perceived number of patrons effectively scanned as reported by lifeguards to the actual number of patrons effectively scanned in that 30-second period. So the results here show, so this compares those that were correct versus those that overestimated or underestimated. And this was determined from the lifeguard questionnaire. So we asked the lifeguards how many people that they thought they could effectively scan within a 30-second period. So of those that were surveyed, 49% said they could effectively scan 75 patrons or more in a 30-second period. 29% said that they could effectively scan between 50 to 70 patrons, and 25% said they could effectively scan between 0 and 45. So what we found was that 52%, in 52% of cases, there was an overestimation of the number of patrons that could be effectively scanned within that 30-second period. So then coming to aim 5, so aim 5 was to determine the potential impact of the external environment, for example, glare, temperature, pool design features on the number of persons a lifeguard can see in a visual scan of a public pool. Again, this was taken from the survey of the lifeguards. So this was looking at the factors that lifeguards note in their day-to-day role, the effects of these other physical aspects. And we do know that there's been research on these particular aspects as well, and noting those effects on the ability to scan effectively. So these are the results from the survey. And you can see there that really the key factors are glare and any sort of barriers or obstructions. So those key really external environment factors. Also noting that patron distractions were noted as well, that's really a key factor. And again, that one has come up in previous studies as well, the influence of patron distractions on the ability to detect a drowning victim within that appropriate time frames. So coming to the conclusions, so with higher numbers of patrons in the pool, the ability of lifeguards to detect a drowning victim within the recommended time to prevent long-term effects decreased. So based on the findings, it would be suggested that the current ratio of 1 to 100 decreases the ability for lifeguards to scan effectively for drowning patrons. So we really do need to revisit the guidelines and have a look at that ratio. As always though, and looking at, the research often, we answer one question and we open up, multiple more questions from the research. So very happy to take more questions, people. So if you have any questions, please type those into the chat. Some of the things that we have been thinking about around potential future research and the things that we need to continue to or look at further exploring is looking at which scanning patterns and lifeguard behaviours are more effective in detecting a drowning victim promptly. Also looking at the effectiveness of lifeguard training programs, and I know there's a lot of training programs out there. I think that's a key thing that we need to be really trying to embed into the training, is looking at what's the next step then as far as improving the techniques and the effectiveness of those programs in improving identification of a potential drowning victim. And there's a lot of work that's come out recently from the UK, particularly around training videos and showing what a drowning victim looks like. And I think that has some great potential there in being able to look at, to understand what you're really looking for as a lifeguard to detect a drowning victim. As we noted, the victim often submerges quite quickly, so being able to detect the person both on top of the water but also under the water and look at what are those different signs of a drowning incident. Also to investigate if different pool setups influence the lifeguard's ability to identify potential drowning victims, and if there is an optimal sort of design or setup that could be implemented. I think, the more that we look at that we can advise at that early stage in the design of a pool, and looking at things around removing any potential barriers, those visual barriers that might impair the ability to really scan a pool effectively. We need to really have a look at that and be able to provide advice, to architects and to industry around the ideal design of a pool. The other area is to investigate the efficacy of 2 or more lifeguards working together. There's the potential that having more lifeguards, you can get possible interference with that sharing role. The thought that one person is monitoring the pool as opposed to the other. So looking at that effect as well. And also looking at, as the technology improves, it would be beneficial to replicate the study using more interactive technology and being able to do it in your actual environment as well. There's a number of studies where, using the eye tracking technology, I know they use it in supermarkets and all of that sort of side of things. So it'd be great to actually be able to use it in that real environment situation. And I'd just like to finish off by acknowledging all of those involved in the project. Our thanks to all the facilities and the lifeguards that participated in the research, as well as the simulated drowning incidents, and also to acknowledge the funding. So great thanks to Royal Lifesaving Australia, and also the support of the AFAR intern program, which is supported by the Australian Government's Department of Education. So thank you everyone for listening, and I'm not sure, I can't see up if there are any questions, but I might hand back to you, RJ, if there are any questions.
Thanks, Dom. Yes, there are a couple of questions coming in, which is fantastic. So we had a question asking about ratios. So the new GSPO is suggesting a risk assessment approach to specific ratios, and then sort of a comment about it being subjective. So the question really is around what is the ideal ratio, or is, what is the research indicating around an ideal ratio? I might let you answer that one, Doc.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I think that, clearly the ratio of 1 to 100, we need to move away from that. As we saw, over 75 really influence the ability to detect the drowning victim. And it does also indicate that over 50 can influence the ability to detect the victim within that 10-second period, which is a really short period. So that 1 to 50 needs to be looked at more closely. I do think though that risk management approach really does need to be looked at very closely, because we know that pools are very different. There are different design aspects, and you know, this is probably one to hand back to you a little bit too, RJ, is that you know, the various factors involved, as we can see, you know, the influence of glare, any sort of physical objects that may prevent the ability to scan as well. So that risk management, going through that framework is really important, and I'm sure that that our team in the pool safety side of things can really assist with facilities in that regard.
Yeah, absolutely, Doc. So to answer that question as well, Tommy, so the research that Doc's team has done is very, very clear that over 75 is probably not it's not going to work at all. So so that much is clear. In terms of how you go about that risk assessment process and the supervision planning process, you know, there's really an overlap between the activities that the patrons are doing, who the patrons are, do they have any pre-existing vulnerabilities that's, you know, that research tells us exists, multicultural, coming from landlocked countries, pre-existing medical conditions, disability, that type of thing. And then what space are they doing it in? It's the environment as well. If there's, you know, significant impacts from glare, or it's deep water, or there's a sudden drop off, that type of thing, that those all influence. Those should have direct influence on your ratios, and also how the lifeguards deploy through the area. So more than happy to help anyone out if that's something they're interested in. This is essentially our bread and butter. So we've got from Matthew from Brimbank, is there any plan to include research where the lifeguard is changing their supervision point, continuously moving? So obviously highlighting one of the limitations of the research study, in that we couldn't move the cameras as we were doing the filming. I think, and feel free to jump in, Doc, but yes, Matt, it is a limitation, and obviously having a dynamic and roving patrol structure is advantageous for managing line of sight barriers. The other thing to note as well, and to balance it the other way, is that these participants knew that a drowning event or simulated drowning event was going to happen in one of the videos that they were watching. So they were probably, by the nature of the activity that they were doing, a little bit more alert than your typical lifeguard rolling in on a Saturday morning at 7 o'clock in the morning. So something to think about. It goes sort of both ways. So there's another question. It's about showers. Not going to answer that one. Sorry. Rose, is there a scope for the virtual reality technology to be incorporated into the pool lifeguard update as a unit of competence? So Rose, I'll probably answer that one too, Doc, if that's all right. So Rose, there is already a augmented reality component of the pool lifeguard update in the online blended learning. So I don't know if you recall the module, but you're in the Hawthorne Aquatic and Leisure Center, and you look around and they highlight various line of sight barriers, glare, etc., and talk through strategies of deployment. We are looking to integrate as much VR into our training as possible over time, and obviously there's some expenses and hurdles to navigate, but it is on the plans. Okay, we have another question here, Doc. So working at a wave pool, GSPO is allowing 3,000. Not sure what reference allows, just blanketly states you can have 3,000 in a wave pool. Lifeguarded with 1,000 with fellow lifeguards. Most stressful thing I've ever experienced. What can be done about this? How can it be done safely? So Jenny, just to answer your question, it doesn't sound right. I mean, I'm not sure how big this pool is, but I'm not familiar of any pools in Victoria that would have a capacity of 3,000. Seems unreasonable to me. and not practical at all. So feel free to get in touch. Sean Weber, showers. Any research done on a larger pool, say a 50-meter pool from Connor? I can't remember, Doc, if we did we try filming on a 50-meter pool? Did it become a bit pixelated over that distance with the VR?
Yeah, that's right. So we did look at the 50-meter pool as well. Unfortunately, the quality of the video, we really struggled. So you wouldn't be able to see the drowning victim just because of the quality of the video. So unfortunately, yeah, there is that limitation. And as noted earlier, the ability for someone to move around, we know that that's the typical way lifeguards work, in that they're moving around. The other consideration around that one was making sure that we were consistent in where the lifeguard was standing. So we could only have a certain number of variability before you add too many variables in, and you can't actually determine which one is influencing the results. So that was part of the other reason as well for having that one position. But we did have a number of angles as well that were able to be looked at, and with the VR it did help. While there were limitations, it did help in being able to, that you could look around and choose where you were looking as well.
Yeah, okay. So there seems to be a lot of requests coming through for feedback on or discussion on chair hours, which, look, I'm happy to talk to anyone about chair hours offline. It's not really on the topic of today's seminar, which is around lifeguard supervision research. We do have some guidance on cleaning from Cleaning Melbourne, who are they sponsor our Pool Safety Summit and the Swim Safe campaign. So the Dave, who's the managing director there or business development manager there, he has come from one of our platinum pools, has a strong background in pool safety. So happy to discuss that offline. In terms of this project here, if there's any more questions, feel free to drop those through. If you'd like to have a look at supervision plan sort of templates and things like that, happy to share that type of thing as well. But otherwise, nothing coming through at the moment. I'll just cover off while we're waiting for any additional questions to come through around supervision and/or ratios. If you can see my screen, we've got next Tuesday, we've got a train the trainer session for Swim Safe. So if you have Swim Safe at your facility, or you'd like to get Swim Safe at your facility, it's another research-based public safety campaign developed by Lifesaving Victoria's Risk and Research team over a number of years. It follows from the Watermark and Ascot male drownings, which were multicultural and/or disability. So it targets adult vulnerable swimmers. We now have Swim Safe in place at over 100 facilities in Victoria. So this session is around training your staff in key messages and providing them with the key information. The following Tuesday, we have in-water non-traditional exercise programs. So we've got Barry Harrison, who's the general manager at Aquapulse, and Barry introduced a series of in-water non-traditional exercise. I think they've got submersible exercise bikes, and they've got if you've seen the yoga on the mats and that type of thing, they've got quite an interesting program there. So if you're looking to try something a little bit different as part of diversification in this next normal that we're all in, that'll be a really great session for any aquatic operations or aquatic programs people out there. The following week, TBC for now, apologies. We've had a couple more questions come through, Doc. Thanks for staying on the line. So Tommy is asking, was the study and results based on a 25-meter 8-lane pool? So Tommy, the study was based on a Learn to Swim program pool and a 25-meter lap pool that were side by side, separated by a 3-meter concourse in the middle at MSAC, if you're familiar with that facility. And it's next to the wave pool, in between the wave pool and the 50-meter indoor pool. We've got another question here. Did the research look at mothers, babies, children, adults, old adults, and or disability? That's probably one for you, Doc.
So what we looked at, we had two scenarios. So one was a child who was around 12 years of age, and then the other one was an older adult. So we weren't able to do too many different scenarios. Again, trying to reduce the number, or the amount of variability there. So I think there's a lot of potential there in further research, but really highlighting, I think, the coming back to what RJ said around, these are the things that need to be considered from a risk management perspective. Looking at, really important to get a good understanding of what your facility is looking like and the users in the facility. And all of these things, potentially can affect the ability to detect a drowning victim, but noting that, what we were looking at is really around the number of people in general in the pool, and really demonstrating very clearly that when you get higher numbers of people in a pool, particularly over that 75, that really reduces the ability for one lifeguard to be able to detect the drowning victim.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm happy to sort of cast up here quickly. I don't know if anyone can see the screen, but this is a sort of a sample supervision plan, and the new GSPO section is very, very thorough. We've run workshops on this in the past here at Lifesaving Victoria. If there's appetite for a workshop on supervision planning again, please let us know. We can do a webinar on that, and would be happy to do so. But essentially, what you're looking at is really planning out. I don't know if you can see this, or if it's too small, but planning out, the area, the design features, the user profiles, the usage trends. So, the times of day and what kind of people are coming in and what they're doing, and then a supervision arrangement or a strategy around supervising that period. We have this sort of intersection here between the user, the activity, and the facility, or the environment. That the supervision plan really happens at the intersection of those, and it's not just about a blanket ratio. We have a little bit of general sort of considerations here, and public safety programs like Swim Safe, Watching on Water. But here we also have the user risks, so different types of higher risk users, and some comments around why they're higher risk, suggested controls and treatment measures for those higher risk users. And then we have different types of activities or actions as well. So, users with using different activities here. So some controls there. So water safety teachers, activity risks, again, different activities. And then the environment as well. So changes in water depth, difficult to observe areas, glare, water refraction, water clarity, quality, dead water mapping. So taking your environment and plotting out on that map, where your line of sight barriers are, where your rescue equipment is, etc. Obviously looking at this pool environment, it's very different. You've got glare over here, and you come over to this side, it's a totally different supervision arrangement than it was from this orientation, just the opposite corner. And then likewise over here, again, totally different again. So sort of mapping out from different positions where the impacts of glare are and what the lifeguards can actually see. So, and then coming up with a deployment strategy for that afterwards. I won't bore you too much with that, but that's kind of what supervision planning looks like. And after you've taken into consideration all of that information and this research, guidelines for safe pool operations, both the supervision section and the risk management section, then you can start thinking about your supervision strategy, and ratios really probably will be one of the last considerations that you really should be thinking about who's there, what they're doing, and how many of them are there, what kind of higher risk categories might exist. So Matthew Blee, is LSV looking to develop some sort of content that facilities could use to complete in-house training? Site specific would be more beneficial to get the ball rolling tech available. Is something we're looking at. So using VR for in-service training, yes, is the short answer. It's on the plans for this year to look at in-service training and how we can create a blended model to that. It's always been delivered face-to-face. TV, not sure who TV is, but how do we get this document for us to convert to our own facilities, please? So TV, everything that we do, unfortunately, takes time and resources. So you can engage us. You can engage us to go through this process with you. There are various resources out there and things floating around that you can leverage. But if you are interested in engaging us, you can do so. I'm happy to take a query in that space. Looks like that's it. Maybe Doc for questions. I'd like to thank you, obviously, on behalf of our organisation, but also Fitness Australia, who partnered on this series, just for making yourself available. Particularly, you came forward in the program at last minute, so thank you very much from me personally as well for coming forward. And it was great having you today. It's a really useful project with significant implications for risk management and how we lifeguard into the future. Thanks so much, Doc, for coming on.
My pleasure. Thanks, RJ.
Okay, thanks everyone. Have a great day. I know everyone's getting back to work. If you do have queries about cleaning or showers or what to do right now with the various requirements, you can send us an email to assessments@lsv.com.au. We can point you in the right direction and would be happy to touch base with anyone. Okay, thanks very much, everyone.